Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Student, and welcome to today's presentation. First, I'd like to thank Cairo Secure for giving me the forum and the opportunity to speak. It's always an honor, and I very much appreciate it. Today's conversation is going to be centered on the business of chiropractic. And even though I'm talking about what's coming up in 2022, it really is applicable to January, February, March, April, May, June, in any year 23, 24, 25. But right now, certain things are happening that we've got to pay attention to. Because as one of my former mentors taught me 45 years ago, there's a business hand and a service hand. It's the same person. You can't let one influence the other, but it's not the church of chiropractic, but it's also not a race to the bottom to see how little we could charge to compete with those other people charging less. So it's really about being the best of the best through clinical excellence and being paid a fair and an equitable fee. Now, when we look at this, you all were all running small businesses. You're not running mom and pop shops. Now, in a mom and pop status, it's really look, a grocery store. And by the way, I don't want to denigrate any business. Okay, a local grocery store, not a chain, but a local grocer, or a candy store, or a butcher. Some people do really well, but a lot of people say if I make 50, 100, $150,000, I am golden. But in a small business, according to the Small Business Administrator, it's defined by firm revenue from $1 to $40 million. That's where we fall in small business. And we really should be in the $1 to $2 million range with a single practice. Listen, I consult offices in the $25 to $30 million range, chiropractic practices. I consult offices who are barely paying their bills. So you're running a small business. Why? But the problem is most of us consider or run our business like a mom and pop shop. Now, what's a tell? Here's a tell. A mom and pop shop will run a paper checkbook. Do you run a paper checkbook? If you do, you're very 1960s and 1970s. You need to be on a computer program. I use QuickBooks. It's very, very important to have the power of information. You need to know things. So if you're still on a checkbook, you're very yesterday and you can't run your business on a checkbook. And that's very, very important. And one of the reasons that's important is you need to know what your profit and loss is at any given time. Now, what's a profit and loss? I collect $100,000. I have $70,000 in expenses. My before tax profit is $30,000. Now, do I have any other tax write offs against this? Now, what does this have to do with chiropractic? The answer is the business hand and the service hand. So you have to understand these things. You can't say, well, my accountant comes, and we'll talk about accountants in just a minute. So you've got to have a full, whoop, that wasn't meant to change, but you could change it. I banged the desk instead. um, you need to understand what those profit and losses are so you can prognosticate or plan ahead. And that's critical. So when we look at the profit and losses within 15 seconds, you should, and this is from QuickBooks, which I strongly recommend. I've been using it since 1998 in every business that I'm in, okay, in every business. And a check entry takes me about 5 seconds, including printing. It doesn't take a long time. I'll be able to see what my net income is, and I'll be able to see what my expenses are, and I'll be able to look at them, and I can guide my business. And that's very, very important because when you plan, your tax deadline is not December 31st. And by the way, you might have until April 15th to file, but you've got to have everything in your checkbook by December 31st. You know when I start to plan? January 1st. I start to plan January 1st because I need to know what's going on. Now, and to do that, we have to look at an accountant. And we're going to go back a slide in just a moment, but we're going to look at an accountant. Most people Meet with your accountant once a month, occasionally once a quarter, but I talk to him all the time. You don't have an accountant. You have a TurboTax. All he does is take your checkbook and feeds it into the computer, plunks numbers in. You can do that yourself. You don't need them. And then he fills out forms. You don't need them. Behind every good business is a great accountant. I meet with my accountant every single month, starting in January. Every month, and we sit there because let's go back a slide, because we sit there starting January 1st, and we actually meet the end of every month. January 31st we meet, on or about, and we go through the entire checkbook and we categorize everything that we do. And at the end of January, on January 31st, I say, okay, what do we need to put away? What's our profit looking like for this year? And I have a separate account, and I'm putting money away in a tax account so I don't get caught short at the end of the year. Then we look at things like IRAs or retirement plans. Then we look at tax shelters if I need those. And by the way, if you work with me, you're going to need a tax shelter because you're going to make more money. You got to put it somewhere. Then in February, we meet again. And then in March, we meet again. Every month, we're knee to knee. I don't really particularly have to work with a CPA. CPAs are less apt to be aggressive in the IRS code. I work with an enrolled agent, and I'm not against the CPA, but I'm thrilled with my enrolled agent. I work with an enrolled agent, which is a tax preparer, first for many years. Then I morphed over to a CPA, fired him after 2 years, went back to an enrolled agent. I'm thrilled. And every month we meet, and every month we review the books. You've got to know what's going on. You have to know how you're paying people. And by the way, if you have a 1099 on your staff and they're a provider, you're not doing it. You can't have a 1099 in our industry. It is almost impossible to have a 1099 as a treating provider in your office. Almost impossible. And every single accountant, CPA, tax lawyer says no. IRS is looking at them, insurance companies, the answer is no. But you've got to sit with your accountant every month, non-negotiable, every single month. Not every quarter you send them stuff. Oh, I talked to them on the phone. Doesn't work like that. You've got to set everything up every month and review, because how are you going to know in December what this check you wrote in January was assigned to? You have no idea. You've got to categorize everything. You've got to look at everything. You've got to look at your corporations and just how you flow your money. It's very, very, very important. So if you're running a mom and pop business, you're going to be on a paper checkbook. You're going to meet with your accountant once a year, send in stuff every quarter, and call them and ask questions. I grew up in a retail family who ran stores in New York City. Our families ran mom and pop shops, and there was nothing wrong with it. We had a great life, and I'm not denigrating that. I'm just saying we're really aspire and functioning in the small business environment, $1 to $40 million. And if you want to grow, your financial acumen, your ability to handle money must grow with you. Because if you do not do that, you're going to end up with less, because I don't care how much you make. I care how much you keep. And you need to keep more using the tax code, working smarter, not harder, and understanding. My accountant just came to me. I mean, right now I'm recording this. It's the end of December. He says, Mark, you're going to need some deduction. So go buy whatever you want that's related to your business. Go buy stuff. And I went out and spent a bunch of money to buy stuff to get it in before the end of the year. That's called the tax write-off. So I'm looking at, or a tax shelter, I don't care what you call it. It's legal. It's not a gray area. It's in the tax code, and you use it to your advantage. Now, these are just the basics, and there's so much more that I want to chat with you about. When I work with doctors and I first sit with them, I say, okay, I'm going to come up with a strategic business plan till you're 100 years old. 100. And people scratch their head and go, seriously? I said, yeah. I said, you're going to work maybe until you're 70. Then between 70 and 100, you have to be able to live and function and have money, and you can't do it on Social Security. So we have to look at how much you have saved, we have to look at the value of your home. Is it going to be paid for? And if it is, that's what's going to be used to carry you from 70 to 100. Meaning, if you have to go into an assisted living or a nursing home where you need an aide to live with you, where's that money going to come from? Where are you going to live? You're not going to have the fight at 70 years old to schlep bones anymore. Okay? And I love chiropractic, but when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, you're in the pits. When you get in your mid to late 60s, and I'm turning 66 in a few weeks, you're not going to have the fight that you had previously. So you're going to need money to live. So I tell everyone, if you start at age 70, you look at your home, you're not going to take that money. That's going to carry you until you're 100 years old. You need a place to live, and it has to be paid for by then. Then you take all the money you saved up and divide it by 360, meaning from 70 to 100 years old is 30 years, 12 months a year, it's 360 months. So you're going to take 360 installments out of your retirement, out of all of your money. I don't care if you call it retirement, not a retirement, your liquid money, not your primary home. If you have real estate, you might want to consider start turning that into cash in your 60s so that by the time you hit, because it's not a quick sell, you want to be able to use that money until you hit the pine box around 100 years old and you could live. And that's really important. That's strategic business planning, handling your life from beginning to end. Now, if we go and we look at practice, how are we going to plan for next year? Well, do you want to be a personal injury practice? Do you want to deal with workers' comp? Do you want to have a pediatric practice? Do you want to have a Medicare practice, a sports injury practice, or just a general practice with slip and falls and aches and pains? These are things you need to decide about what you want to do. But how do you make that business decision? How do you make that decision? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to stay updated in the industries. You have to stay updated because most chiropractic business models are upside down. And mine was for years. Let's see, it was in the mid 80s. We were in the insurance heyday. One day I woke up, I went to work, and I had 30 cancellate. Well, that's not true. All my patients came in, and 30% of my practice, when the bills were sent in the next billing cycle, paid with zero because we went from the old-fashioned indemnity plans to managed care plans, and I wasn't in my state organization's hierarchy because it was nepotism at its worst, and I wasn't on those panels, and the next thing I knew, I wasn't getting paid on 30%, and I had to let go of all 30% of those patients. And it's, oh my goodness, how come I didn't know that? I got caught by surprise. If you're dealing in any of the genres of healthcare, you have to understand what's happening in that genre of healthcare. What's happening with personal injury? What's happening with workers' comp? What are the laws about treating children? What about Medicare and the rules? What about sports injury people? And how are we going to get them paid for? Because it's the business. Are we going to go to cash? We're going to look at all of these different things. And are we staying abreast of the current information? You've got to know what's going on in today's marketplace. And the key word is marketplace. And I'm going to start using business words. Okay. Market share is incredible. But gaining a market share when you're losing money is not a place to be in the marketplace. For instance, in workers' comp, if they decide you're only going to get 8 visits, you could treat them for 100 visits. You might have to go to court after those 8 visits. You're going to lose money. If you're dealing in just sports injuries or slip and falls or people coming in with back or neck pain, and you're dealing with managed care, okay? A lot of these managed care companies will give you 6 visits, and after that, they're going to torture you, and they're only going to pay you $32 for 6 visits. Well, guess what? You're going to go out of business soon. If you think that you want to run a cash practice, but you're competing with these franchises, the next thing you know, it's a race to the bottom. I'm going to do a $20 evaluation. I'm going to get $16 a visit. Guess what? You're not going to be able to afford your rent or your mortgage or your dinner. It's a race to the bottom. It's a silly place to be. It's just a silly place to be. So when we make the business decision, we look on the left side of the scale. Do you want to make more money or less money? So on the left side of the scale is managed care, Medicare, workers' comp, and cash. Okay? So you're going to be looking at less money because you're getting paid less per visit. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I mean, listen, for many years, I saw 650 visits a week, and I was cash and managed care predominantly. And I did great until I broke my back from adjusting patients, both shoulders operated on, hand surgery on both sides. My hip was just replaced. I mean, you can't do that volume for that period of time. But then I looked at personal injury. And you know what happened when I looked really, really hard? I fell in love. And look on the left side. I am passionate about trauma care. Passionate about. I love treating trauma cases. The everything is new when people come in. What's wrong? Let's figure. I mean, it became a jigsaw puzzle to me. And at the same time, I found out. And if you look at that graph on the right, that's my research. I've done it every other year since 2011. Right now, I'm just finishing up 2021. These are all published in the American Chiropractor Magazine, which is an index journal. But why should I work for $40, $50, or $60 a visit when I can work between $200 and $400 a visit doing the exact same thing? Does it make sense to do the same thing on the same patient and make so much less? To me, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense at all. I mean, I'm a numbers guy. Say you're collecting $60 a visit and you're seeing 150 patients a week for 52 weeks a year. You're collecting $468,000. That's not a bad amount of change. But say you're collecting 200 a visit times 150 visits a week times 52 weeks a year. Now you're making $1,560,000 on the same number of patients doing the same services. Oh, but there's so much more documentation in personal injury. Well, guess what, folks? That's a fallacy. Because if you think you're going to document different from a cash patient from a PI case, that's the slippery slope to losing your license. Everyone has to have the same level of documentation. If you're not, you're pandering to the plaintiff's attorney. Don't ask me, ask a licensure board. They'll tell you. And by the way, who has a higher level of scrutiny? Personal injury or cash patients? The answer is cash patients. Because when a PI patient gets angry, who do they complain to? The insurance company. And often, the insurance company doesn't care. It's just about money with them. But if you complain to a licensure board about a cash patient, because that's the only place patients have to complain, they are mandated by law to do an investigation on you. You're screwed. You will get investigated. And a licensure board is much less forgiving. Listen, you don't want to be investigated by anyone. And I can sit and talk about documentation and pitfalls. I have relationships with the attorneys from a lot of the insurance companies. I read federal cases against chiropractors all day long. I know what's going on out there. But the hardest doctors to defend are those who run cash practices who actually have to answer to licensure boards. It's hell. So you just have to do it right, and you need the same level of documentation. It doesn't matter. But here's the thing with personal injury. Now, listen, I've been in a cash environment. I don't like to do that. I love personal injury. I've been in workers' comp. I've never lost so money as much as dealing with workers' comp because we did it well. We educated the patient. We played by the rules. But workers' comp is stacked against you because workers' comp is run by the states. It's rarely privately funded. So therefore, all the rules are set against you. I've never written off so much money, millions in my career because of workers' comp. How to treat them, how to pay for them. So it's just not a place I would choose to be. So it's really, really important you understand the rules of every single game. But in personal injury, there are two things that are required. Documentation, and that's important, documentation. This is the number one thing I hear from lawyers. Man, the medical primaries and the chiros don't go back one, Alan. The medical primaries and the chiros don't know how to write reports. It's killing us. You know what they don't want? They don't want your referrals because then they're saddled with you. And you're sitting there talking about being a healer and subluxation. You're not talking about what you found as far as documentation. And they're losing money with orthos, neuros, and neurosurgeons, but they're losing more with you if you are not educated properly. You need an education. The second thing you need is credentials. Credentials are the key when dealing with personal injury. It's documentation and credentials. And by the way, there is no one or two magic items. What? And I get this a lot when doctors call me to consult for me to consult for them. What's the most important thing I have to know in personal injury? And I said there is no most important thing. There's so many small pieces of the puzzle. So many. For instance, if you write in a report on an X-ray report, the lateral cervical reveal foraminal encroachment in C4-5, lawyers just want to work with you because you didn't write, I personally reviewed the lateral cervical, and now they can consider that hearsay because it could be read by a radiologist. So there's so many little things, little facets. But as far as credentials go and the knowledge comes with it, I put up on the screen 6 sample credentials. Trauma qualified, primary spine care qualified, MRI interpretation review qualified, expert witness and documentation qualified, evaluation and management qualified, interprofessional hospital qualified. There's so many academic levels of recognition that you can get that are real. These are all approved through Cleveland University, Kansas City College of Chiropractic. They're all approved through Chiropractic Academia. These are formal credentials. Lawyers need this to work with you. And then if you want to kick it up a notch, we finally, after 7 years, have worked with the State University of New York at Buffalo, Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, the Office of Continuing Medical Education, in a joint partnership with Cleveland University, Kansas City. They now certify a fellowship in primary spine care. You want to work with attorneys? You want to have collaborating relationships with orthos, neuros, and neurosurgeons? You want to work in urgent care centers? You want to be considered in a hospital? This is the credential that'll unlock most of those doors because you're a fellow certified by a medical school. It's about credentials at the highest level. Okay? Listen, this is what lawyers clamor for. As an example, I had a doctor in Illinois. This is just out about 6 weeks right now. She joined the fellowship, and on her CV, she wrote fellow candidate primary spine care through SUNY Buffalo Medical School. SUNY is State University of New York. She spoke to a neurosurgeon, and she said to the neurosurgeon, she had told the neurosurgeon, I have a case to refer to you, and I'd like to have cases referred back. And the neurosurgeon said, listen, I don't really work with chiropractors. I work with physiatrists and orthos and neuro. I don't really work with chiropractors. Please understand that. She goes, but I want you to know that right now I'm in a fellowship program through the State University of New York at Buffalo School of Medicine. He goes, send me as many cards as you can. He says, I love chiropractic. I just haven't found a chiropractor who was credentialed enough. We had another doctor in Cedar Park, Texas, who met with an orthopedic surgeon and said the same thing. The ortho only gave him 5 minutes to kiss his ring. 5 minutes. He wanted his referrals. The ortho wanted the chiro's referrals. They spent 45 minutes in the room. You know what they talked about? They talked about slice acquisition sequences on MRI. And the chiro said, listen, I am credentialed through the State University of New York at Buffalo School of Medicine for MRI review interpretation, for qualification. And he's credentialed through the school. The guy got 150 referrals from that ortho that year. Go back, Alan, one slide. So if you look at each of these credentials, even though Cleveland recognizes the qualification, every single course is approved through the State University of New York at Buffalo School of Medicine. These are things that are unlocking the doors. They're just unlocking the doors that we have. And I do have to share with you, it just works. I can tell you right now that our average doctor gets between 25 and, between 15 and 25 new cases per month, mostly PI. And we've been doing it for years. That's at the average doctor. And that's in 49 states. It just works. But what's the plan? How do you do all this stuff? Well, here's what we do. First, we start with helping you build an infrastructure. Then we get your documentation down. You've got to be compliant. Documentation is about two things, reputation and compliance. If your documentation is horrible. You're using paper documentation, check boxes. You're not putting in past medical history, review of systems, or height, weight, blood pressure, pulse, all the things your licensure board requires, what real doctors do. Your reputation is trash. Lawyers aren't going to work with you, and MDs probably, most definitely, will not work with you. They're going to consider you no more than a technician, like a PT. But once we get your documentation sound, then we work with getting you credentials. Those are your tools. We're going to get you coursework, formal coursework recognized through both medical and chiropractic academia. Then you're going to you're going to start building some relationships. And in those relationships, we teach you how to start getting referrals. Then you become the solution to the case. Once you become the solution to the case and you do it enough, you morph over to the inverted pyramid and you become the solution to the practice. Once you become a solution for the medical or legal practice, you created peer relationships or you're an expert. Then you start teaching the lawyers and the MDs. And then you get their exclusive referrals. And then they become your advocate for inclusion. I'm meeting in a week from tomorrow with a hospital. They reached out to me because I was the solution for a medical primary care who happens to be the head of the internal medicine department in a hospital. And he found that I was a fellow through Stony State University of New York at Buffalo. And what did he do? He set me up with the COO of the hospital. We're working with another hospital in Illinois. We're working with hospital urgent cares. It doesn't matter. They're going to run after you as long as you position yourself properly. That's really the goal, folks. You've got to position yourself, and that's the goal. So listen, in 2022, and by the way, I've just scratched the surface. So if you want to learn more, go to teachkairos.com. You can call me, you can email me. But really, it's about setting up a strategy for your office. You need a strategic business plan. It's not a race to the bottom. Just because this franchise charges $16 for a visit doesn't mean you have to charge $15 a visit. It doesn't mean that at all. Just because they're cutting corners on an evaluation doesn't mean you have to cut corners on an evaluation, because it's going to end up potentially costing you your license or being taken down by the insurance carriers in a RICO federal claim against you because you build carriers and you didn't complete the elements. You didn't put a time element in. You didn't put a whatever. The point is that you have to do it right. It's not a race to the bottom. It's a race to the top. And in a race to the top, become credentialed. The more credentials you have, the more patients you'll see, and the more money you're going to keep, the more money you're going to make. Now you need to work with the right accountant and have the right business system set up so you get to keep more money, because really that's what it's about. So listen, I'd like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to share this. If you'd like to talk about your practice at any point in time, listen, I welcome your phone call. My phone number was up here on the screen a moment ago. Here it is. I welcome a phone call and email. I'd love to chat with you. If it helps chiropractic at any level, which means helping the chiropractor, I am happy to work with you. I'd also like to say that in the next presentation, Mike Misko is coming on. He's an attorney who's just a champion in defending chiropractors against allegations. He's wonderful. So I'd like to share with you to come in. And again, I'd like to thank ChiroSecure for giving me the opportunity to speak. Listen, I look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.